I'm super glad we had all that positivity before this message, because this will counterbalance that. There are Torah portions that are awesomely uplifting. They leave us soaring. We have split seas and shining faces and beautiful covenants and construction projects and all kinds of, fulfilled promises. But Parshat Korach, where we are in the Torah in the book of Numbers, is not one of those. Don't get me wrong, there is definitely beauty in there. We have Moses and Aaron are vindicated against the attacks of the rebels. We have Aaron again confirmed as his staff buds and produces these almond blossoms. There's cool stuff, but its main story is its main story, and that is the rebellion. The rebellion. It's almost cinematic as you read it. You can see all the parties aligning, and you have cousins conspiring, and the princes of the people are posturing to get there. The ground is literally opening up and swallowing people. And it's a very unique look at human interaction that is familiar to all of us. Power struggle, rebellion, politics, complaining, all of these things, jealousy, manipulation, so many other tactics and human emotions that are in play here. And I love Torah portions like this because they're extremely real. They are real, even if they're a little bit scary, seeing God's judgment on display against people, even in this case, his people, but those who challenge his decisions and authority, or in this case, who challenge his anointed ones, who are Moses and Aaron. But there's something really, really important, something else to learn from this Torah portion, and it's not only for our general practice or our general knowledge, but very much current in our times today to learn from this portion, especially as Jews and Gentiles that are aligned with Israel, and that is where we're going to end up. But first, I want to take us back to another horrendous scene in the history of Israel. And when I phrase it that way, where might you imagine I would take us back in the Torah to a horrible thing that Israel was a part of? The golden calf, Mount Sinai. And I'll ask you this question, Torah trivia. What was Israel's great sin at Mount Sinai? What? The golden calf. What was the sin? Idolatry. Melted earrings, a bull, a cow, a golden cow, unholy dancing. Idolatry, that's true, but it's not the whole truth. In the Midrash on the book of Exodus, it points out that this is a sort of a haunting statistic. Out of a nation that could fill the football stadium in Atlanta, 10 times over, only 3,000 of those people were judged by the sword. There were millions. The whole nation was not involved, and therein lies the problem. It is noted by commentators that they neither fought for God or for the calf. They just stood as spectators. In modern psychology, we call this the bystander effect. We don't, I'm not a psychologist, but psychologists call this the bystander effect. There are many, many opinions in Judaism that recognize that it was a small number of millions of people and only 3,000 died. What was the sin? Apathy, complacency. That was what everyone did, not taking a stand. When you know what is right, when you know what God desires, when you know what your responsibility is to stand for the right things, and instead you just stand by and watch it happen. You stand idly by, and the majority of Israel was not directly involved in what occurred there. There's another whole story about them contributing their earrings and their gold and all that. We won't go there. But they were involved. Why? Because they didn't stop it. They didn't stand up. And the point is that apathy is evil's little twin, little partner. You may never bow to a statue, but if you refuse to resist when evil walks in the room, when the nation around you is falling and failing and bowing, the effect is the same. God's honor is defiled, people potentially suffer. Now I want you to there's Mount Sinai, that's what we're talking about. Now fast forward to this week's Torah portion. In Korach, see a repeated pattern, but with a very significant and terrifying escalation for the consideration that I'm proposing to you today. Korach, he's Moses' first cousin. He has Datan and Aviram. He has 250 respected leaders, and they stage the first recorded congregational coup. You take too much upon yourselves, they say to Moses and Aaron. All of us, the whole community is holy. That's their charge. Now on paper, that sounds very democratic. It almost sounds righteous. Yeah, I mean, we want to serve. But it's envy dressed as piety. That's what's happening here. God is not impressed. And God says to Moses and Aaron, separate yourselves from among this assembly, this edah in Hebrew, edah. Separate yourself from this assembly so I may consume them. And then once again, we see Moses intercede for the people. And Aaron is with him this time. They collapse, face to the dirt. It's very Abraham at Sodom-esque. You remember when Sodom was being judged and God said, surely, or Abraham said, surely, the God of all righteousness would not kill if there were, right? You remember that? And so here they go to God. Moses, God says, I'll strike them all down. Separate yourselves. Get back. Moses and Aaron fall on their face. No, please, God, source of the breath of all flesh, shall one man sin and you be angry with the whole edah, the whole community? And the plea is heard, but not exactly in the way they imagine, because God relents. He says, he does not wave away the danger. He doesn't say, okay, fine, I'll just punish Korach. Instead, he tells Moses, you issue a public declaration to these people right now. Do you know what he said? You remember what Moses said to all the people? It's the title of this message. Get yourselves up. God told Moses, you speak to this community. You tell them, get yourselves up, move away, separate yourselves from around the dwellings of Korach, Datan, and Aviram. Get away. And there's the shift that you need to see. The question is no longer what Korach did or about his rebellion. The question is, what are you, the people, going to do? You make a choice. Moses said, you surely won't kill them. And he says, no, I won't kill them, but I will demand that they make a choice. This time, Moses, your intercession will not remove their guilt if they stay where they are. If they do not take a stand, if they do not separate themselves from those things which are opposed to me, they will pay a price. In other words, there is guilt by association. At the golden calf, God accepted Moses' intercession. At Korach, God is demanding action. He's demanding that intercession isn't enough. You people must move. And so what we see is from Sinai here to Korach, this divine patience for apathy has run out. Careless association, and here's the point. God is just. God is merciful. But he calls on them to make bold choices, to make very public and probably unpopular stands. It is discussed in many commentaries how convincing these guys were about this rebellion. The timing itself of the rebellion. There's, of course, an argument about whether the timing of this in the Torah. But the point I'm making is this was strategic. This was after all the troubles that they had had in the wilderness. This is after the not going into to the promised land. This is when they chose to rise up and say, this Moses is a failure. And you can imagine this accusation is perpetual, is put forth by very respectable people in the community. The princes of the community, the Levites. We might call them, to borrow a modern term, influencers. And thus it would be very unpopular when the very popular people are saying, you guys, we got to do something about this. Come over here with us. And yet had the Edah chosen at this time to be apathetic, what would have happened to them? The ground would have swallowed them. They were close to experiencing the deadly cost of doing nothing. What did I do? You did nothing. And that's the point. That is this point, and again, this cinematic Torah, you can kind of hear the shuffling sandals and the tent pegs coming up out of the ground, and they're like, okay, let's get over here. And then sure enough, God acts. Edmund Burke captured it perfectly when he said, when bad men combine, the good must associate. Else they will fail, one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle. God said it first in the Torah, in Parshat Korach. Separate yourselves from evil. Separate yourselves. Evil requires a response, and God's patience for non-response has limits, which brings us to this point, and you can say, well, very nice. That's a nice lesson from the Torah, Rabbi. Interesting, really good. What does this have to do with us in 2025? Well, a lot. The same pattern has played out in human history for millennia across all cultures, across all lands and countries where people have stood by and done nothing. It has especially been a problem within Jewish history. The apathy of those who stood by, who watched or denied that it was even happening, they just chose to not act. And it resulted in the death of millions of innocent people in the most god-awful, god-forsaken ways imaginable. But this message isn't it's not an anti-Semitism message necessarily. It's not about the history of anti-Semitism. I'm using Korach actually to point to the future of anti-Semitism. To what is happening right now, and do not tune out because you hear coming another message about the anti-Semites and the Jews. Do not tune out, because this has everything to do with you. It's about you as much as it is about a Jew. How are we a part of the ancient Torah portion about a controversy in the wilderness? Apathy. What is this, my friends? I am not. My wife and my parents sitting in the front row might disagree, but I'm not a dramatic person. I try to be level-headed. I try to see the good in all things, and yet there is a time always to stand up and be honest and see things and call them out. There will be a time. There is now a time, actually, like Israel at Sinai, like the Edah at Korach's camp. We are being called, if you're listening, to separate yourselves from an evil-minded narrative. Evil. It's so evil. It's so dark and evil, and it's becoming very, very popular. which seems like such a contrast, doesn't it? How many times in history has it happened? A lot. A fresh strain of, listen to this oxymoron, Christian anti-Judaism is metastasizing in podcasts, in pulpits, in publications. Slick. It's data-driven. It's wrapped in the American flag, and it says, I'm just asking questions here. And I wish that I were exaggerating. I have really asked God, should I say the names? Does the message lose its power if it feels like I'm holding up a straw man? And should I say the names? And I have to say the names because they're at the point of the spear. And you need to know Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Joel Webbin, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz. You need to know the names. And I'm going to tell you in rapid fire, I recently saw Tucker Carlson doing an interview with someone saying that Genesis 12 has nothing to do with the Jewish people. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. Has nothing to do with the Jewish people. It is an absolute lie put forward by dispensational theology. And it really, actually, I saw a vitriolic pastor giving a message about this and saying, Abraham in Genesis 12, it says it was his singular seed. If you bless, if you curse, and I'm not even going to do it. He goes into Galatians and he points out the fact that actually what he's talking about there is all the followers and only the followers of Jesus. Because Abraham had a singular seed, and it was Jesus Christ, and I don't care about those Jews, and they're lying to you, and you shouldn't care about them either. A pastor undoing Genesis 12, but it's happening all over the place. This is a new trope. A new trope. Dispensationalism has blinded the Christian mind. That's what they're saying. That's a very confusing presentation I just did, but this satanic lie that's being put forth, I'm not talking about dispensational theology, forget about that. I'm talking about the twisting now, the twisting before your eyes of what you know is true in the Bible. It is a manipulation of the Jews, they say. And the point always goes to, God is done with the Jews. They are not part of the story. I know you know Candace Owens, who is maybe actually one of the most dangerous voices out there. She is also vitriolic. But you know what? Young people listen to her. It does not matter how foul the spew is that comes out of this woman's mouth regarding the Bible and Jewish people and calling them demonic. I had already written this message yesterday when I saw this report that Candace Owens charged publicly Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, who has been working on Jewish and Christian relations for decades in Israel. She publicly charged that he is offering to pay pastors and rabbis in Bitcoin to stand up here and talk bad about Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. And she was publicly refuted and, as far as I know, has said nothing. I have not received any Bitcoin yet. My message was already written about Tucker and Candace. It doesn't have anything to do with Bitcoin. It has to do with the truth and the danger and the vitriolic spew that they are putting forth that people are listening to. That's the problem. Now, so many of these things are done under the guise of speaking against the modern state of Israel, right? That's where it started. And we have new players in this. There are some new players. Anyone know who Nick Fuentes is? You probably should. Nick Fuentes is a younger guy who actually has, one week he's celebrating Hitler. The next week he puts forth this conspiracy theory about all kinds of things that the Jews are involved in. But you know what? It's not just the right-wing, hardcore, radical right-wingers that are listening, or just the left-wing, flaming, out-of-their-mind people who are listening. There are actually people listening to what he's saying, and one of the most recent things he said was October 7th. October 7th, the presentation was, you want to tell me that the most highly distinguished intelligence agency in the world didn't know that was happening? His presentation is that the Jews allowed October 7th to happen, that those massacres that happened in the South at the hands of the demons of Hamas were orchestrated by Israel. Why? Because if they could do that and we could see all the terror, then first of all, they could attack Gaza, but much more importantly, they could then get into a fight with Iran and ultimately bring the United States into this fight. This is what he's saying. And you know what he's being called? A prophet. And you know who's calling him prophet? People like, he may not have used this exact word, but I just saw a podcast from a guy named Joel Webbon, W-E-B-B-O-N. You know Joel Webbon? His recent podcast was called Nick Fuentes Was Right. This is a guy who is a pastor who has millions of YouTube videos. Tucker Carlson was interviewing one of Joel Webbon's compatriots about the Jews in Genesis 12. It's a mesh. It's a network. Joel Webbon said, you know, I have a problem with this term Messianic Jew. I don't think anyone should call themselves Messianic Jew. There's a better term for it. And his friend said, oh yeah, what is it? Such a cute little interplay they had going. Christian. Christian, that's what it is. God's done with the Jews, he basically summarizes. And in 70 AD, God put his stamp on that. Christians owe nothing to the Jews other than to evangelize them. That's what Joel Webbon said. How ridiculous is that, first of all, from a theological perspective? But practically speaking, you see the language about Israel as a mask among all these people. But the bottom line is, underneath it all, Jews are dangerous. And the people's message is going out, it's being received. October 7th, Gaza. Now we have the, quote, 12-day war, which are resulting in a new wave of Christian rejection. And I mentioned our own Congresswoman, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do you know that Marjorie Taylor Greene was one of two people who voted present for a bill after the massacre in Boulder, Colorado, that was speaking out against anti-Semitism? She was one of two who voted present. Do you know who the other one was? Rashida Tlaib from Michigan or wherever. Why did she do it? Hate crimes are bad, but they're bad for everybody. It shouldn't just be the Jews. I'm paraphrasing. She declined to support the first resolution against anti-Semitism because she does not support outsized attention to threats facing Jews. Former representative, denied Attorney General candidate Matt Gaetz. I don't understand this guy. You know Matt Gaetz? Matt Gaetz. It's like there's a brain tumor or something that just all of a sudden changed the way he thinks. In 2017, he sponsored a bill in Congress with Ted Cruz to stand with the Israel and Jerusalem and do all this stuff. In October of 2024, he wrote, "The terror raining down on Israel is unjustified and unacceptable. Iran has persistently spread violence in the Middle East to the detriment of all its neighbors and its own citizens. America stands with Israel in this battle of good versus evil." Today, that was October of 24. He also voted against a bill on anti-Semitism. Now, you have to listen carefully to understand why. The bill says that, this is him quoting, "Why did you do that? The bill says the definition of anti-Semitism includes contemporary examples of anti-Semitism that are they're identified by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. One of those examples includes claims of Jews killing Jesus," Gates wrote. "The Bible is clear. There's no myth or controversy on this. The Jews killed Jesus." Do you know how ancient that trope is and how much death and destruction has come from that trope? And that's the reason that he didn't vote it, because it makes the Bible a lie. The Bible never says this. Who killed Jesus? We all did, and the Romans, and the Jews had a part. But it's a trope. And most recently, he has a new talk show, Matt Gaetz. Israel didn't kick their regime change habit with Iraq or Libya or Syria. It seems they need another fix. I wish this was really about Iran's nuclear program, but it's not. To which Candace Owens chimed in and said, "Matt Gaetz is on a rampage and I'm here for it." Well, thank God, Candace. I don't even have to make this about Israel. It's fine. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. You want to say that we shouldn't be involved in military things in Israel? Okay, I'll even let you have that. But that's not the point. Well, they're only criticizing Israel's government. I'm not here to sell you foreign policy points. I disagree over the military if you want to, but understand the deeper current that when you delegitimize a covenant with Israel, when you delegitimize and you ultimately erase Jews, when you erase the Jews, you rewrite the Bible. You rewrite the God of the Bible. And that is the story being told around you and growing in popularity. Webben goes on to say, I just saw this podcast with tons of views. There is no reason really to support them. Now listen to Psalm 83 and know how long and old this is. Your enemies make an uproar. Those who hate you lift up their head. Those who hate you lift up their head. They make a shrewd plot against your people, conspiring against your treasured ones. Come, they say, let's wipe them out as a nation. Let Israel's name be remembered no more. For with one mind they plot together. Against you do they make a covenant. Psalm 83, there are many other ones. That was the easiest one to pull out. That theology is abhorrent. That theology is deeply misguided, and again, I don't throw the word around a lot. It is satanic. Do you understand why it's satanic? It's satanic because when Satan and the powers of evil can rewrite the Bible and redefine God as one who does not hold to his covenants, the whole house of cards falls apart. It is beyond belief to me, honestly, beyond belief that any Christian can read Romans 11, where Paul specifically comes and says, what? Do not be arrogant, because you can be cut off, he says. To who? The nations, the Gentiles who are arrogant toward God's people. And in this case, forget about cut off. I'll just say swallowed up. The end game is not Israel and having America separate from the modern state. That is the palatable presentation behind the scenes. I was absolutely disgusted to see Tucker Carlson to suggest that there is no evidence that the Bible causes Christians to support Israel. Hint, hint, the Jews. Let's use the most obvious one. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Who lives in Jerusalem? Primarily Jews and also Arabs. We've been here before. I do not want to be overly dramatic. I promise I won't do that. I don't want to make connections that don't exist because we're not there yet. But we have been in a similar place where the tides turned and the world did nothing. We know the results. So that's what this has to do with Parshat Korach. You ready for it? There is no audience I could speak to that is more important than you. Messianic Gentiles, as people associated with, connected to, heart tethered to the Jewish people in Israel. We know we're in it together. And for anyone in the church who's hearing this, God help me if you're hearing me slam the church, because that is not what I'm doing. I still believe that the majority of people in church, the big majority still probably, do not hold to these ideas. They absolutely reject them, but that's not the point. The point is, silence is not an option. That's the point. Even when Israel was influenced by what seemed to be a good case made by Korach, Moses doesn't care about you, he's for himself. We're not going into any land, you can forget about that. We should go back to Egypt. No matter what, God required them to separate themselves from the false narrative. Get away from them, separate themselves, get up, get out. And in our modern context, and so many times throughout history, not just for Jews, for humanity, if people had stood up, humanity and the world would be better for it. God does call us to make our own choices in our own lives, to live our own holy lives. But he also many times calls people to make public and unpopular choices and to be out loud about it. And I want to ask you if you're willing to do that. We, Messianic Jews, grafted in Gentiles, we're at this crossroads that's eerily similar to what I see the Korach's tent. The whole thrust of the Parsha, get out. It's a summons to stand up visibly, courageously, stand up and get out. And so I'll use that very framework to close this thing out. Stand up. Stand. You ready? Stand. Study the scriptures and the headlines. No, you don't have to now, but thank you, Michael. I'm going to make an acronym out of this. Stand, because we always talk about standing with Israel, don't we? Stand with Israel. I stand with them. Matt Gaetz said he stood with Israel. My gosh, maybe take a seat, brother. Study the scriptures and the headlines. Understand the communications and what's being said. Understand what Genesis 12 is, what Romans 11 is, what the new covenant is. Understand your Bible. Invest in studying it. Test the voices. Test the voices. Run the things you hear through the filter. Does this honor a covenant? Is it aligned with the God I know from the Bible and his position and all the Psalms about Israel and the Jewish people? Does this align? And if it doesn't, don't trash it. Learn how to refute it. Amen. Test the voices. And then I want you to learn, articulate the truth. When someone lies, call them out. When you don't have to do it rudely, you can graciously, firmly use the Bible in one hand and history in the other one. And articulate the truth where people can hear this. Network with receptive voices. Look for people. Identify friends and communities that are still curious about Israel and the Jewish roots, and share a teaching. Invite them to Shabbat. Do something. Put some truth into their lives. And absolutely, you must defy apathy with action. You will study. You will test the voices. You will articulate the truth. You will network with people, and you will defy apathy with action. If you find something online that you're reading and you know this is bad, I want you to post it on Shalom at Home. We'll do something with it. We'll figure out how to make a response, do something. If you find things that you go, oh, post it on Shalom at Home. Amanda, Darren, Derek, Lance, David Higginbotham, my dad, anyone, we will stand against these things visibly. We have to have a voice. We have to take action. Will you do this? Why will you do this? Because I want you to? No. Because you love the Jewish people? That's a great start. I'll tell you why you'll do it. When's the last time you read Matthew 25 and the parable, and I'll paraphrase it for you, of Yeshua talking about the sheep and the goats? Do you remember what he said? He said, you stood with me. You stood with my brothers and you stood with me. That's what he says. And you who didn't, you goats, I'm sending you off to the left. And you're not going to enter the kingdom. Everlasting punishment he talks about. That's not really exactly what it means, but that's the point. Yeshua issues the very same proclamation. Separate yourselves from those who do not stand with my brothers and sisters, which are who? Who are Yeshua's brothers and sisters? You know who it is. That's the same calling that Moses and Aaron gave. I am not suggesting that I know the mind of God or the will of God when it comes to these, what he's going to do, what he's thinking. I'm not that. I'm not going to say God is going to open up the ground under Tucker Carlson and, pull him down to Sheol. I don't know any of these things. What I do know is they're reading a different Bible and they're teaching people to read it that way. And that's dangerous. And you have a voice. And it seems we are standing or soon will arrive at a place of required decision. You must make decisions as you watch history unfold before you. You cannot be apathetic. You must decide if you will boldly separate yourself from that Ada of lies, that community of lies and hatred, and that you'll powerfully stand. And you better be prepared, and I wish this were a great positive ending, but you better be prepared for some discomfort, because that has happened throughout history to many from the nations who stood with the Jewish people. There is a price in this world sometimes for that, which I am almost guaranteed that is offset by an exponentially larger reward in the world to come, because that's what Yeshua says in Matthew 25. You have to be prepared. The point is, and often is, and will continue to be, take action. Do not sit by. Speak out. Separate yourselves and speak out. Edmund Burke again. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. May God bless us with the strength and wisdom to stand. Really stand. To separate, to do our part, no matter how small. And that we might actually hasten the coming of Messiah. Because when he comes, he will repair it. �Yisrael chai. The people of Israel live and will live. Shabbat Shalom.
I'm Darren with Shalom Macon. If you enjoyed this teaching, I want to ask you to take the next step. Start by making sure you're subscribed to our channel. Next, make sure you hit the like button on this video so that others know it's worth their time to watch. Last, head over to our website to learn more about Shalom Macon, explore other teachings and events, and if you're so inclined, contribute to the work that we're doing to further the kingdom. Thanks for watching and connecting with Shalom Macon.